many different ways that we can talk about chemical reactions. We've been talking about these complete chemical equations here, like in number 3, sometimes called molecular equations. But we can also have the whole thing written out in a sentence. It's just another way of saying it. It's like if you were to look at a complete chemical equation and read it to somebody who couldn't see it. So number 1 says solid aluminum bromide reacts with chlorine gas to produce solid aluminum chloride and liquid bromine. When you're going from a sentence equation to a complete balanced equation, you need to use all the tools and all the information you have. You can also have just a word equation where it has the names with plus signs, so it takes out some of the extra words, but we won't use those very much. The first thing to do is translate these names into formulas. Something that can be helpful is to go through and underline the compound names. Makes it a little clearer. So we have this reacting with chlorine to produce, that means that's where the arrow is, aluminum chloride and liquid bromine. We know aluminum bromide, if we're going to drop and swap, we get AlBr3. We also know it's a solid, so we need to say solid. Plus chlorine gas. Now you might just put Cl, but you have to remember that chlorine is one of your diatomic molecules. So it's not going to be Cl, it's going to be Cl2. And a gas. To produce aluminum chloride, when you drop and swap that, and it's a solid. And liquid bromine. Bromine is also a diatomic molecule. So make sure that has that too. So we've taken all the words and turned them into symbols and numbers. The last thing to do is to balance it, because you can't say it's a complete equation if it's not balanced. If we go in and balance, you can count your atoms and then spend time adding and subtracting over here. I know that I'm going to need 6 bromine because I have 3 and 2, and the lowest number they'll both go into is 6. So we put a 2 here. That gives me 6 bromine and 6 bromine. Now to balance our aluminum, we put the 2 here, which now gives me 6 chlorine and 6 chlorine. So now we have a complete balanced equation that we got from that word equation. Now we have to practice it again because there's some things that aren't specifically said, but that are inferred based off of what you're told. And it'll be helpful to be able to understand that. Ammonia gas bubbled into, that means it's added to, hydrochloric acid to produce a solution of ammonium chloride. So we've got a nice simple synthesis reaction happening here. Ammonia is one of the few things that you have to know the common name for. We know it's a gas. And it's being added to hydrochloric acid. We're not told explicitly the state that this hydrochloric acid is in, but we know because the ammonia gas is bubbled into it that the hydrochloric acid has to be a liquid. Now it might be a pure liquid, which is pretty rare for acids, or it might be an aqueous solution. And we can actually tell because of this. If we're going to end up with an aqueous solution, we don't just make water produced from nowhere. So that means this hydrochloric acid started as an aqueous solution instead of just a liquid. So some of it's not explicitly stated. You have to read and think. We have ammonium chloride. If we drop and swap, we get NH4Cl, aqueous. If we count everything, we can see that we're all balanced, but I wanted to do that example because I wanted to make you practice figuring things out on your own. let's practice with this one going the other way. From a complete balanced equation into a sentence. It's really important to understand that everybody could make this sentence slightly different. That's one of the things about language, is that you can say lots of different things. That arrow can be produced, forms, reacts. In this case, we know it's decomposition, so it could be decomposes. So I don't expect everybody's sentence equation to look exactly the same. If you're doing a practice problem and you're not sure if your answer's right, please just send me a message and send it to me and I'll check it for you. But as long as you have all the important pieces, all the same information, and everybody could get from your sentence back to this balanced chemical equation, then your answer should be correct. One of the steps on the way to going from a complete balanced equation or a molecular equation to a sentence equation can be a word equation. Now, you might not actually do this out on paper, but we will in this example just so that you can kind of see what the process is like. And that's just changing these compounds, these molecule formulas, into words. CaCO3 is calcium carbonate. So we will write calcium carbonate. It's important to keep the arrow having that triangle because it tells us heat has to be there. CaO is calcium oxide. And carbon dioxide. And now we can fill this in and make this sound prettier. When we are writing this, I like to put in as much information as I have. So that means I'm going to use the word decomposition or decomposes. But you don't have to. But you have to talk about heat and you have to talk about those two states of matter. Those are not optional. They have to be in there. I'm going to say when heated, calcium carbonate decomposes to produce calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas. And I realize what I have skipped, so we'll go back and add it in just a second. Should go back and make sure I talk about the heat and I talk about the gas, but I don't say solid. So when heated, comma, solid calcium carbonate decomposes to produce calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas. So again, yours does not have to look just like this, but it has to have all those pieces of information in it. I've added some practice problems below. I want you to check and make sure that you've got a good understanding of this because it's using a lot of the basic chemistry skills you should have learned in your first chemistry class, but it's good to practice them.